Hello, thank you all for joining. We'll get started. People might still come in the meanwhile. My name is Victor Lupescu. I'm a community manager at Cognizant Softvision, Romania, for DevOps and the big data and analytics communities. I have a background in business intelligence, so that means that while I've worked with various clients, I've helped them to transform their data into insights in order to shift from gut-based to data-driven decisions. What I've seen during all these interactions is that we live in a world surrounded by data. However, we still fall short of its potential. And there's a particular area that I want to focus now, and that is how we visualize the data that we want to present. Because we spend a lot of time extracting, transforming, cleaning the data, and then we have something to work with. But when it comes to showing that data in a way that makes sense, that helps businesses take the right decisions, we still lack in many parts. So this session is an interactive one, and I'll try to help you better understand how to properly show the data. We have an agenda, of course, and we'll go through some topics during this 90 minutes. Hopefully you won't get bored in the process. First of all, we'll do a check. What that means is we'll do a setup, because I will use a live polling app such that I can see your answers. And I also want to test your knowledge. I want to know what your current knowledge is on data visualization. Then we'll go through a learning process. There we'll go through some specific steps that make sense whenever you're trying to show any kind of information in a visual format. And at the end, we'll consolidate your learnings. We'll test the knowledge again. Hopefully we'll get a better result than in the first test, and that will mean that I've succeeded in helping you better understand this topic. And at the end, we'll have a contest where the winner of that contest will receive a prize. It's a Programmers Week kit. Okay, so let's get started. Like I've said, first thing, the setup. So please open any browser on your phone, or you can use directly the QR code here. Please open it in your phone, but please do not use your full name. It's very important. Please do not use your full name, because this session is live streamed and we want to be GDPR compliant. First name plus last name initial works. I don't know, a nickname works as well. You can choose to be anonymous or creative, but keep in mind that we'll have a contest at the end, so it might be nice to know whom to award the prize to. We have a thing for that. I'll get into more details as we get there. We'll need a screenshot of the results from your phone. So scan the QR code or open any browser on your phone. Go to the link that it's shown there, and let's get started. Let me come back to this slide so you can all scan the code or enter the link. If you have any difficulties, you can use the Q&A section, and we'll try to resolve them. And one important aspect of this talk, unfortunately, I can't hear you, so we'll have to use the Q&A written section in Zoom. So whenever you have a question, please write it down. We'll check it during the presentation and at the end as well. So I'll try to answer all your questions, if I have an answer to them, of course. I see we have 34 attendees so far. 22 have joined this live polling app, so we'll still wait for for the others to join. 23 now, and let's look at it interactively as well. I'll come back to this slide every couple of seconds. So 23 so far. Here's the QR code again. If you encounter any difficulties in joining this, please write in the Q&A section. We're still waiting for about 7 of you to join. It's really important. It's if you'll join this, you'll be able to interact with this presentation. I'll be able to get your feedback to again test your knowledge at the beginning and at the end. And let's not forget about the contest as well. And keep in mind, you'll always have the link at the top of the page in case you, exit the browser for whatever reason and don't have the QR code again. Okay, let's go. I have another question for you in order to better understand what you currently do and somehow map this entire presentation on your skills. Okay, pretty interesting results so far. So we have software engineers, DevOps engineers, web developers, DB engineers, software engineering managers, manager, human resources, BI developer, architect, CEO and founder, project manager, student, IT passionate economist in day-to-day life. This will be interesting for you, definitely. This session. Okay, UX designer. Nice. The session isn't necessarily directed to a specific occupation because we all create charts at some point or another, even if we don't realize it. We show information in a way or another. Even if we're writing an email, we might write some numbers there. If we use a table, there are some better ways to show data rather than a table. So I hope this entire session will provide you some light into how you can use the charts, what are the tricks that you can use to make it more relevant, and so on. Okay. Next step, as I've said, is testing your knowledge. Again, you are the important actors in this presentation, so I really want to know your current knowledge. What I'll also do is calculate the average correct response rate at the beginning and at the end to see if we if you've managed to learn something during this presentation. So no pressure. And yeah, let's get started. We'll have a set of questions. You'll see the question on the screen. You'll see the question on your phone as well. I recommend using the screen for seeing the chart and the answers, and just answering from your phone. It has a higher resolution, of course, so you can see it better. The question is pretty easy. So it's all 5 questions are the same. You'll see a chart, and the question will be, is this chart used correctly? And you'll have 3 options: no, yes, but not optimal, and yes. And let me explain it a little bit. So no means that I shouldn't have used that chart for that specific data. It doesn't make sense, and so on. Yes, but not optimal means I have used a chart that might work, but still it doesn't transmit the message correctly. And yes, it is when you fully understand, okay, I see this chart, I fully understand the data, it makes sense, it is okay, I would use it as well. Keep in mind that you only have 30 seconds for answering each question, so you have to be fast, but don't rush into it. I mean, 30 seconds is enough for you to read the chart and pick an answer. Okay, let's go. We have a bar chart here on the left. You see some labels there, what it's trying to say. My question is if it's used correctly or not optimal. Okay, time's up. Let's see, only 16 of you managed to respond. Okay, please be more careful at the next one. So 75% of you said it's not used optimal. The correct answer is no, it's not used correctly at all. It doesn't fit the purpose of the chart, and you'll see some errors here in the way it is built. First of all, one of the important dimensions here is a time dimension. We have before 1981, then 1981, 1990, 1991, 2000, and so on. So it's about a trend in time as well, right? So we could have represented that as a trend in time. Another issue is that if you look at it, the total doesn't stack up to 100%. It's only the entire total, so not each bar represents 100%. So it's really hard to get an honest and true insight from this chart. Another quite big issue is that the slices on the left side on the chart here are so small, it's pretty hard to see the differences between them. Again, one other thing is if I would look for, let's say, the 2011, 2016, which is the gray area here. If I'm trying to compare this one with this one, it's very hard to see if it's greater or not. So I'm missing labels. I can't really know if it's they are different or not. So I don't know if in Canada or Ontario, the percentage was higher between 2011 and 2016. Hopefully you got a glance into what I'm trying to trying you to understand in this. We'll go to the next question. Oh, and we also have a leaderboard in the meanwhile. So Miha and Robert managed to answer correctly and really fast. Suara and Lucian managed to answer correctly, but a little bit slower. Let me come back because I forgot to note. Okay, so it's 25% correctly. Okay. Next one. Okay, 27 people responded at this one. That's good. We're on an ascending line here. Let's see the correct result. So the correct answer is yes, 85% of you responded correctly. Really good job here. So it's a simple ranking classification chart. I want to see the emissions by region. I've used a bar chart for this. I can see that Asia is generating the most emissions, then the Americas, then Europe, and so on. And what's important here is that the bar charts are also ordered descendingly, so you can see who's first, second, and so on. Okay, nice job. Let's see how you do at the next one, and let's see the leaderboard. Nice. Okay. Is this chart used correctly? For those of you who have joined later, you can still join the live polling app using the link at the top of the screen. You can open it in any browser on your phone or on your laptop, but I would suggest your phone such that your screen for the laptop remains for this presentation. Okay, the answer here is not optimal. 46% of you answered correctly. This is a really good percentage because most of you, like I expected actually, would have said yes. The issue with this one is that it uses color when it doesn't need the color. So if I would have had here gray lines, it would have been the same and it would have been easier to read. So in this case, the usage of color doesn't add any value. And you'll see later that it doesn't make sense to make our charts or dashboards fancy just by adding color and so on. It's really important to keep it simple so that your users can focus on the important part, the data, nothing else. Let's see the leaderboard again. That way you'll see where you stand. Okay. Is this chart used correctly? Okay, let's see the results. The correct answer is no. 50% of you have answered correctly. This is good, actually. The reason why this is not used correctly at all is that whenever we use a pie chart or a donut chart in this case, the total should represent 100% always. There's no, exception from that. So if you use it for showing that, Microsoft HoloLens represents 77% of the market, or it focuses 77%, then Magic Leap 67%, and so on. So the total would be around probably 300%. It doesn't make sense. So it's not a part to whole relationship. So we don't have to represent it using a pie chart or a donut chart, which is basically a pie chart with a hole in the middle. Robert, you're doing really great. I see you've answered correctly to all 4 of them. Next one is this chart used correctly? Really curious about the results on, on this one, as it might start some polemics. Okay, that's good. 50% of you have answered correctly. Okay, so the average of correct responses so far for the start is 51.2%, and it's actually really good. I did this presentation before at Kodiak's, same questions. The correct answer rate there was 43%. So yeah, really nice to see that you already have a base on which to work on. The reason why this is not optimal is that even if it's theoretically it makes sense, it's really hard to compare values when you have this kind of area and an angle included. I'll show you later there are easier ways to do this, and they actually take less space on a screen, which is also important. And let's see the leaderboard. Congratulations, Robert. Top notch here, 5 answers correct out of 5, really fast. Really nice to see that. Congratulations to the others as well. Pretty good the response rate so far. This is not for the contest, it's not for the prize, right? So it's just a matter of seeing your current level. The contest will be at the end. Okay, now that we've seen some examples and I've shown you what works and what doesn't, we'll go into deeper details on how you should think when you're trying to visualize the data. First and really important is start with questions. And there are some questions that you might try to answer yourself before even get started. What are you trying to say? Of course, that's the most important thing, right? What are you trying to say? You might not know it at the beginning. Keep in mind that you might play with the data a little bit, play with the charts, and then draw the conclusion. But still, you at the end of it, when you show a chart or a dashboard to someone, it should be pretty clear what are you trying to say or what are you trying to show. Second, which is very important as well, is who is your audience? And here, I'll give you a funny example. I don't know if you've seen this banner in Bucharest or in the news. It was a campaign done by a chocolate producer. When there was a concert in Bucharest, they said hello. They put posters all across the city saying, "Hello, Bruce. How was your flight?" Kind reminder for tonight. It's "Hello, Bucharest," not Budapest. Well, it's a funny story behind it. Probably some of you have heard it or heard about it. It all started in 1990, where Michael Jackson started the trend by saying "Hello, Budapest" at his concert in Romania. Then it happened again in 1995 with Iron Maiden. Then Morcheeba, Lenny Kravitz, Metallica, Ozzy Osbourne, Whitesnake, and others didn't consult Wikipedia before coming to Bucharest, and continued the trend of saying "Hello, Budapest" in front of thousands of Bucharest inhabitants. A funny part here is that the famous confusion reached its peak when in 2012, there was the Europe League final in Bucharest, and about 400 Atletico Madrid fans went to Budapest instead of Bucharest. So again, it's something that you'll always have to keep in mind, even if you're creating a chart, creating a dashboard, or even speaking in front of someone, you have to know who is your audience. And another 4 questions that are important is what questions do they have, right? Because once you know your audience, you might think about what questions do they have? What answers can you find for them? What other questions does it inspire? And what conversations will result? It's a really important thing here. So whenever you see some data, it can spark a discussion, a conversation about it. So be careful how you show it in order to spark the right conversation. And there's a sweet spot called relevance between what you want to say and what they're interested in. So try to find that sweet spot, and that can only happen if you really know what you want to say and what they're interested in. And that way you can find that. The key point here, you'll see this slide during the presentation. It contains a key point for that topic. The key point here is your viewers should take something away from the time they spend with your visualization. Don't waste their time. Next part is choosing the right chart. So you know what you're trying to say, you know your audience, try to use the right chart. And there are some pretty simple rules for that. And let's talk first about trends over time. So trends over time is when you're trying to use a time dimension and you want to show the data across that time dimension. The most used chart, hopefully, for trends over time is the line chart. Here we can see the income, tourist income by region for the 4 regions, Europe, the Americas, Asia, and Africa from 2000 till 2012. Pretty simple. It's pretty easy to see that all of them have been rising since then. It's really easy to see that Europe has the most income, then it's the Americas, then Asia. And another thing important here is that you can see that around 2011, 2012, Asia went past the Americas when it comes to tourist income. So it's a really powerful chart. Don't be afraid to use it just because it's simple. It definitely meets its purpose. One thing that it lacks, though, is I have this scenario, okay, I want to see the tourist income by region, but what this chart doesn't show is how is the trend, the overall trend over time. In case I want to highlight that, I might think to use a stacked bar chart. Again, it fits the purpose. It gives you, again, the sense of a timeline from left to right. You can show the categories here. It's really easy here to see that in 2009, the overall tourist income dropped. You might have deduced it from the other chart because the Americas had a huge drop. But again, it's a matter of guessing or trying to make sense of the data. Here it's pretty clear. It definitely dropped in 2009. It was the economic crisis. It was pretty clear. Can you all see the presentation? I see some of you don't see it accordingly. You can enter full screen if it's small. Okay. Another way of seeing this data is using an area chart. One thing that it helps again is seeing the overall. One thing that it lacks, as well as the bar chart, is the ability to compare the values that are in the middle. So if I'm looking at the Americas in both the area chart and the stacked bar chart, I can't really make sense of the differences here. I can't realize if it's higher or lower year by year, especially when we see really close values. While on the line chart, it was really visible. The thing is, it's pretty hard for the human mind to compare stuff that are not starting at the same point, right? So it's easy for me, for Europe to see here the trend. It's really hard for me to see the trend for the Americas. It is a little bit easier on the area chart because I can compare somehow the angles and I can make sense a little bit of the data, but still it's a little bit harder. And again, you don't want your user guessing. What are you trying to say? There's a workaround for these. I suggest it in 90% of the time when you want to see both the categories and the total, and that is the line chart with total. So what I did here is having the same chart as on the upper left, and added another line with a separate axis on the right, which shows me the total. So now I have the full information. I can easily compare in individual regions, and I can also compare the total. And more importantly, I can compare how the drop on a specific region affected the overall. So it's a powerful chart to use. You can think about it this way. The only thing you have to be careful is how you use the legend or highlight maybe that this line is not on the same axis as the other ones. That might be a little bit tricky. Okay, there's another case when you want to see trends over time, but you want to see it by 2 time dimensions. And in this case, what I'm looking at is the number of people in a restaurant from Monday to Sunday, so in each specific day and by hour. This is called a heat map. It's really powerful from that sense. You can see that I have the most visitors or the most clients on around from 8 to 9 p.m. Then I can see I have the most on Saturday and Sunday. So there are many insights that I can get from this. One nice thing that I like about this chart, and it wasn't done by me, is that you also have the totals on the right and on the bottom. So I can compare the totals as well. So choose the chart depending on what you want to emphasize. It's really important. Next one is comparisons and ranking, and it's a very common one, right? You've seen this in the test at the beginning as well. CO2 emissions by region. It's a simple, straightforward chart, easy to understand. It takes me less than five seconds to get some insights from it. And there's, of course, the scenario when you want to see the top X categories by a specific metric. Again, a bar chart can do its work. Using it vertically instead of horizontally, so the right part, it gives you more sense of an ordering stuff, right? Because we're always used to think from top to bottom. So you might have a better glimpse that, okay, it's a comparison. I'm seeing a top something there, compared to this where, yeah, it gives you somehow the same message, but it's not so strong. So always use bar charts for comparisons and ranking. I don't have any other examples that I want to show here because bar charts are simply the best for doing that. It's what everybody relates to, and it transmits the message in a really easy way. Okay, next one is comparisons to a target or a prediction. So this one is a little bit more difficult, I would say. Is right, you have a metric. Let's say revenue. And you have the actual value that you got, right? This year revenue was X amount, but you want to compare it to a target or a prediction, right? Or to a competitor. So this type of chart can show this in a really small format, and it's, again, really powerful. I can see the total revenue, it's the line with the black line, and I can see the target, which is the mark here. But again, be really careful when you're showing this. You have to add some kind of legend or something to it, and you can do that in multiple ways depending on the tool that you're using. This one is a little bit more complicated, and I would only suggest to use it this way if your users are more on the analytics way. I know business analysts, economists, and so on. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense to add that background with gray on the top, which shows him how far he is from the target. And the nice thing about it is that once the user uses this, it's really easy to put a lot of metrics on the same dashboard. And that's really important because you want to show, sometimes you want to show more information in a limited space. And this way you can do it really easy. And the more simple version for this, so you don't, like I've said, I don't have the highlights, the backgrounds and so on. I can see each sales agent, and I can see if he was above quota or below quota. And the quota is simply the mark that you can see here. And you can definitely see, like, you don't need another legend for saying that this is quota, because you can see that when it's below this point, it's orange. Easy and powerful. So bullet charts are useful when you want to compare a metric against a target or a prediction, or to a different time frame, because you might want to compare this year performance to last year performance. Part to whole, and this is the part I like the most, I would say. Whenever we think about part to whole, we think about this. We've seen pie charts all over the place, and 90% of the time they are used incorrectly. And I don't know why people, and especially business people, have a passion for this pie chart. I had some very difficult conversations with various customers to convince them to stop using the pie chart, because from their angle, a pie chart is something that it's nice and it makes sense, and it's somehow, if they have it in a presentation, oh, I've rocked this presentation. Stop thinking like that, right? You can use it in some scenarios, but be careful that to use it correctly, and to use it when it makes sense, not just for the sake of it. If I'm looking at this chart, right, I don't know what the slices are. So this is the first issue with the pie chart. I always have to have a legend. If I put it on the right, if I put it on the pie chart itself, same thing, I still have to have a legend. The issue with the legend in this case is that I always have to move my eyes from the pie chart to the legend in order to see what each slide represents. Another issue with the pie chart is that I have there, for example, Africa and the Americas, the two slices with light blue and orange that are close to each other, and I can't figure out which one is higher. So I have to guess. Okay, it might be the Americas, it might be Africa, I don't know. I might think that, okay, this pie chart is sorted, so I have Asia, then Africa, then the Americas, then Europe. But again, it's a guess. What if the developer just throw the data there, it didn't order it, and it's just a coincidence, right? So you again, don't make assumptions. One trick to fix that is to add the labels. So this fixes the issue that I've told you. It still doesn't fix the issue of going back and forth from the legend to the pie chart. There's an interpretation of the pie chart. It's called a tree map. You see the same data there. Again, it's a little bit, it's hard to read. And another issue, like with the pie chart, is when you have really small values. Like I have this Oceania at 0.5%. I don't even see it here. I mean, I see it, but I can't add a label. I might add a label on hover, but again, for that to happen, I need to have an interactive dashboard, not just a picture. So again, it's a mix of the pie chart, I would say, but still, it doesn't really fit always the purpose. One version that might work is the stacked bar chart you see on the bottom left. Again, it comes with its limitations. It's basically a tree map stretched, right, on only one line. I would recommend it if you have a maximum of 3 values. And if you know that one of the values is not small, because otherwise you can't put the label, so you're screwed. What would be the answer on how I can show this data with world population, the spread of world population across regions? It's easier than you might think. It's a bar chart. Now I have most of the problems solved. I can see that Asia is on top, Africa, then the Americas. I have enough space for the labels. Overall, it takes less space than the other one, and then the pie chart. So it's pretty straightforward, really easy to understand. It lacks something though, so be careful with that. Whenever people see a bar chart, they don't think of a part-to-whole relationship. So it's a matter of educating the user to understand that it's a part-to-whole relationship. So instead of him looking all day, especially if we're talking about a report that it's monitored by someone, instead of all day looking at the pie chart, if he starts looking at the bar chart, it will take him 5 seconds to understand it, and then that will be it. He won't have to guess at any point in time what do the values represent, how much is the value, what's each color represent. Here it's colored, right? But I can get rid of the color now. I don't need the legend. So I can easily use a simple gray line. Let's say it's warm enough to make you look at the data only and at the length of the bar, not at the color. Because if you have to understand to read the color, it's an extra step that your mind has to take. If I have it simply with the color, a neutral color, I'm just looking at the bars. I've also added a label saying % of total by region, and it's in the title. That way, it's maybe the first thing that the user reads, and then I can see the % of total. That's it. It's really more powerful this way, and I strongly suggest you to use this type. And think about the samples that I've shown you at the beginning. There were pie charts with over 10 values on it. It doesn't make any sense to use a pie chart when you have more than, I don't know, 4, 5, let's say, tops categories, right? Otherwise, you can't make sense of it. It's too crowded. It's too much information. Stop using it that way. Another interpretation of the pie chart is the half pie chart. Again, same issues. Somehow, in this case, it's used pretty okay, I would say. So I only have 2 values. I can easily see that new customer visits represent 76% more, and it's more than the 24% for repeat customers. I can also see the entire values here. So it's an okay way of looking at it. But I have that angle that I need to compare, and that tricks me a little bit. Just look at this one. It's so much simpler. I just have a line, right, a bar, and I can see the new visits, returning visits. I can see the value. I can see the percentage. There are some marks added here, so 0%, 100%. They are not, I know, it's pretty easy to understand. And then at 50%, I have a small line, dotted line here, so I know where the middle is in case it's right between, I don't know, 58 and 62%, between 48 and 52% for one value. So conclusion here, try to avoid pie charts or donut charts or any other tasty charts. Bars are usually better, so try to use the bar chart and see how it looks. You might be more happy with your chart afterwards, and especially your users might be more happy. Correlations. Correlations is when you're trying to understand how one metric impacts the other. Here is an example of seeing multiple metrics on the same chart. It's internet coverage versus urban population by country in 2014. This is not a simple chart. It needs some time to read it, and it makes sense to be this way. So don't worry that your user might take some time to understand it, because we are trying to understand a deeper picture of the data. So it's okay for him to spend some time to understand it, but try to not confuse him. And if you start looking at it, it's pretty simple. On the bottom axis, on the left axis, sorry, you have the urban population. So what % of the population lives in urban spaces? So the higher a dot there, the higher percentage of population in urban areas. Each dot represents a country. It's important, I forgot to specify that. Each dot represents a country. The height, right, how high in the chart the dot is represents the percentage of population in urban areas. And on the bottom axis, from left to right, I have the internet coverage %. What % of the population has internet coverage? A really quick conclusion that I can draw from here, and it's actually the purpose of building this chart, is there any correlation between the % of people who live in urban areas and the % of people who have internet coverage? And everybody would expect it to be, and it is, because as I go from left to right, the dots are higher and higher and higher, right? So it's simple. I can see that trend. There are some outliers here, which are also important. So I have a country here on which I would be able to click and see, okay, it has 95% internet coverage, but it's only at 17% population urban. So again, it's something that might be interesting to look into. And one more thing is that I've used the size of the bullet for, and it represents the total population. It's just to see which are the higher population countries, and I can see easily China and India here. This is another example of a correlation. I'm looking at the correlation between sales price and sales quantity. So what I can see from here is as the prices decreases, the quantity both increases. It makes sense, as usually in any market, the products which have a lower price sell in higher quantities, and it's something expected, I would say. Another thing that I have here is the net profit, which represents the size of the bullet. What I can see here is that the net profit might be the same. I mean, there might be a good net profit for lower sale prices or higher sale prices. It doesn't really matter. So I don't see a correlation. These types of charts, so this is the scatter plot. This type of chart works when you don't have a time dimension. If you have a time dimension, you can't use it. And if you have a time dimension, you can choose to represent it using other type of charts or a combination of those. In this example, I've used the line charts and bar charts for it. I can easily see over time the trend and how, once I had higher average sale price, the average quantity decreased. So I see the correlation here, and I have the time dimension to correlate it as well. So scatter plots work best when you don't have a time dimension. Otherwise, use combo charts. Distribution. Distribution is when I want to see the distribution of values across a specific metric. This chart here shows the distribution of men's and women's incomes in 2016. From left to right, so left lower income, right higher income, and from and on the left axis, so from bottom to top is how many people were within that category. I can easily get some conclusions here. So it's a really nice way to represent distribution through a histogram. Right? It's very used. I definitely recommend it. Whenever you're using a histogram, don't try to use it like this on the right. I found this example on the internet. It's really bad to do this. Again, it has some added colors there which make no sense. Since it's not a linear scale anymore, it's hard to compare the values from each other. So again, don't think that your visualization needs to look beautiful. It needs to meet its purpose. That's it. So that's a bad example. Another way of showing distribution is through box and whisker charts. I'll definitely recommend looking into it more on the internet as well. I'm just going to give an intro on this, but it's a really powerful chart. Whenever you want to compare multiple values from one data set to multiple values to another data set, and you want to see all the values somehow on the same chart. In this case, we're comparing the performance of a query, the current implementation and the improved implementation. So current on the left, improved on the right. I can see all the test runs here and their response time. So each bullet represents a test run in both cases. And this type of chart has some added marks which help you better understand the distribution of the data. Here you see I've added the average. So average response time was 61 seconds for the initial, 25 seconds for the improved one. But there are some other stuff that might be more important than the average. And that's an important thing when you're trying to look at data to think about the right measure. There's also median, which also makes sense in many cases. So median is where 50% of the values fall into. The median in this chart is represented by the separation between the light gray and the dark gray. So here is the median. And then you have some added marks, and let me explain it a little bit better. So the entire, so I told you this is the median. What you see here highlighted with light gray and dark gray is 50% of the data. So 50% of the data falls here. Then I have the, therefore I can determine that this is the 25th percentile, 75th percentile. So from here to here, I have the 25% best response times, then the other 25%, then the other, and then the other. In this case, there are no outliers, so I don't have points outside this, this line here. This line here represents the data point where the value is still within the 75th percentile value plus 1.5 interquartile range. Again, this is a more advanced one, and it's meant to be read by data analysts and so on. So you might have some cases when you use it, but keep in mind the audience again for it. I won't go into more details here, as yeah, it would take quite some time. So Box and Whisker, it's called Box and Whisker, you can search about it, are very powerful, but users need to be educated on how to read them. Either they are already educated or you need to educate them. Geographical data, more and more used nowadays. Best way of showing it through a map. It really makes its purpose. I would definitely recommend maps whenever you have geographical data. It's much easier for the user to understand it. Here I see the GDP growth across Europe in 2009, which wasn't actually a growth, was a negative growth. It was the economic crisis again. I can see that Poland had actually had a growth, the other countries didn't. One trick with this is the usage of colors, so make sure you use colors that make sense. And another one is, just like on other charts, it's pretty hard to distinguish the light differences between colors. So again, the user might have to guess or click on each country to see its value, which it's fine until one point. What I always recommend is using in combination with other charts. In this case, I've added a top 5, bottom 5, and the comparison with other areas, or an average and the comparison. So I can see that Poland actually had a growth, then the next countries had a smaller negative growth than the others, and Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia did really bad during that crisis. It's something that I could have figured from the chart as well, but it's much easier this way. So pair maps with other charts for details or context. You can even map it with a table. You can pair it with a table. It fits its purpose. Number callouts, one of my favorites because they really transmit the message. So I have the sales this year, $733,000. And I see this figure on the dashboard. Try to not show it only in this way, because I see this value and I'm asking, okay, is it that good? Is it good? Is it bad? How is it? I have to go somewhere else to see if this is good or this is bad. The scope of the chart is to somehow help you get some conclusions. So what you can do is add comparisons, right? So you enrich the chart by adding comparisons. I've added here plus 21% year over year. I'm now, phew, okay, I'm doing better than this year, than last year. This is great. I'm on the right track. Another thing that you might want to do is somehow encode the positive and negative values, so I can easily be triggered and not have to read the entire screen, and remove the round the data if it makes sense, right? It's probably, I don't care if it's 947 here, I can just read 734,000, that's my number. It can be used in combination with sparklines, as you can see here on the right. Sparklines are really powerful. It's a line chart with no axis, no written access and no labels on it, it's really powerful to see a trend. And these are some examples. It's really easy to see, okay, this is the value. This is how I did with the previous period. This is how I did during that period. And I've seen this example in Twitter Analytics, 28-day summary with change over previous period. It's a really good example of how you can use number callouts in combination with sparklines to get a lot of information in a really small portion of the screen. So make sure you supply adequate context for the data. Now, next step is to create effective views. And we'll do some exercises for you to better understand this. So please open your phones again, open your browser, go to that link above. You might still have opened it if you haven't closed the browser. And the question is, how many times does 5 appear in the string? I'll give you more than 30 seconds for this question, as it takes time for you to open the browsers again to start and numbering the time, how many times the 5 appears. Okay, let's see the result. So, quite spread, right? 6 times 33%, 36, 5 times 23%, 3 times 14, and so on, right? So yeah, I think it was quite an effort from you to try and count the number of times that 5 appears in the string. And let's try this again. How many times does 5 appear in the string? Okay, let's see the results. Okay, so 95 of you got the answer correctly. What was the difference between the first case and the other one? Pretty simple. I've used a trick. And the trick is called pre-attentive processing. Pre-attentive processing is actually the early stage of visual perception. Whenever you look at something, something might trigger in your mind in a subconscious level. So without even you realizing it. And you can use that in charts and in other parts as well in order to get the people's attention to a specific thing. So use pre-attentive processing in your favor by emphasizing the most important data. And it's not that one, not just the one that I've shown you. There are multiple pre-attentive attributes, and I'll go quickly through them. Orientation, length, width, size, shape, curvature, added marks, enclosure, contrast, color, position, and spatial grouping. So you'll see that at any example that you look here, one element stands from the other, with the exception of spatial grouping, where you can see that the elements are somehow grouped into pairs. So all of these can be used, but keep in mind that some are quantitative, some are not. For example, the orientation is not quantitative. So I can't say, or it's limited, right? Because I can't really say, okay, this is X times better than this one. Length, it's quantitative. I can say that that length is longer than the other by that much. Width, again, it is quantitative, but it's limited because I have to compare something a little bit harder. Size, it is quantitative, but it's limited because it's hard for me to compare these, and I'll show you an example. So all of these are good examples of pre-attentive attributes. Each element there stands out in a way or another. And I've told you that the size is a quantitative element, pre-attentive attribute, but it's limited. And I have a question for you. How much bigger is the second circle compared to the first one? So you have, if this is 1, how many times bigger is this bigger circle? Okay, let's see the answers. Okay, so 4 times, 8 times, 10 times, 12 times, 16 times. Let's see the answer. It's 16 times bigger. I bet many of you are really surprised, with the exception of the 23% and maybe the 18% who said 12 times bigger. So it's 16 times bigger. And that's why the size is it is quantitative, but it's limited quantitative. So it's really hard for us to really understand the difference. And what happens there is that people tend to underestimate differences in 2D areas. Now, some other tricks that might help you is orient your views for legibility. Don't make the user put his head on the side in order to read your chart. It takes time, so try to orient the views for legibility. Avoid overloading, so don't use charts like this. It's a lot of data, so avoid that overloading. Try to break it into multiple charts if possible. And keep in mind that all that glitter is not gold. Try to keep it as simple as possible. You should try and limit the number of colors and shapes. Right here is a chart where I have too many values on color. I don't have even enough colors for all these data points, so I'm using the same color for 2 countries. It doesn't make sense. This one makes sense, right? Limited values, limited colors for values. And I have these examples, right? Example again, I have all these colors. It's 6 with 12 more, so it's a lot of colors. Try to break it into multiple charts. You can use that really easily, and if the tool allows you, you can add interactivity between it. So if I click on a specific chart, the other will filter, and that way I'll be able to gather my insights, not staring at the chart and not understanding anything. The rule is to use a maximum of 7 to 10 colors and shapes in one view. If not possible, break a chart into multiple ones and use interactivity. Don't display excessive details or precision. Here you can see the population by country. I see Austria has 8,242,663. By the time I finished this sentence, probably it's not correct anymore. Anyway, the data is as of 2010. So try to don't display it like this. You can say, okay, 8 million, 8.2 million, whatever it makes sense for you, right? It's much, that way I don't have to read all that information to understand the data. And of course, keep in mind that when you're showing comparisons between countries, it's really important to sort it in a way, ascendingly or descendingly. Choose the correct measure. If you're trying to compare, for example, budget, the actual spend versus budget, right? How much I've spent versus how much budget I had. I might tend to use this chart, and I'll be able to see, okay, this, sometimes I've been over it, sometimes I've been under it. If my whole purpose is to see if I was on budget or not, and by how much, I can use the difference, the percent difference between actual to budget. And I can use the budget as a straight line, and which is the 0 axis, and then I can see the fluctuations between them, if that's my purpose. And I can now easily see that in week 18, I was 40% over my budget, something that it was really hard to understand from the chart on the left. But again, it really depends on the message that you're trying to transmit. There's no one fit for all solution, except maybe for bar charts, but that's another story. Use annotations. So if your data is static and you want to transmit a message, you have, I don't know, an infographic or something that people don't necessarily interact to, you can use annotations for showing what each data point means, or specific or important phases in a timeline. And use vivid and subtle colors appropriately. What that means is there are two types of colors: standard colors and faces colors. So whenever you use a really dark or strong color, try to use it with a scope. Otherwise, use more neutral colors, like the standard ones on the left, right? It's easier, and the user won't be, I know, aggressed by what you're showing. Don't use, I know, red, bright red, just because, okay, it's I want to be all my dashboard, I want it to be red. And one key aspect: don't try to use the brands of the colors of the brand within the charts. It usually gets bad. You can use different tools for generating a palette that makes sense. And the last step is to combine all these charts that you're building into meaningful dashboards. I'm just showing you some examples here. Website monitoring dashboard. Okay, I want to see how the response time was in time on the top. I have some marks there that show me the target. And on the bottom page, I can see each page, how it behaved, what was the response time versus previous week, and so on. Again, lots of information, but displayed quite condensedly, and it's meant for daily monitoring. And if I click on something on a specific page on the bottom, the upper chart is filtered, so I can see what happened with that specific page type. Another example is I just want to monitor the SLAs. So I can see right now this how I'm standing right now in the upper side. I can see pretty easily that for 2 pages I'm doing bad, and then on the bottom part I can see how it behaved week over week. Again, just some visual clues that show me, okay, I was on track, I wasn't on track. That's it. And again, interactivity, it's a really important part here for deeper dive into information. Another examples where I've avoided the usage of pie charts and used the color in a way that it made sense, because I've correlated the colors for regions within all the charts where it made sense. So if I'm looking by country, I can know each country in which region is where it is. App usage, an example of how I'm looking at numbers, number callouts, and bar charts for looking at a specific trend, because I'm looking at the overall usage. And I also want to look at specific values. Pretty straightforward. Now, the learning part has ended. Let's test your knowledge again. So open your phones, open your browsers. Let's start the test again. The questions are similar to the ones at the beginning. Is this chart used correctly? Hopefully, we'll get over 51%. But let's see. One trick is that since you've learned, the questions will also be a little bit more trickier, or a little bit harder. So it's not an actual apples to apples comparison, but it will give us a glimpse into if you've understood this session or not. So let's get started. Is this chart used correctly? Okay, time's up. Before looking at your results, I don't know how many of you have seen that 8.2% represents 2.8. This is really bad. Okay, So let's look at the results. Hopefully it will work. Give me a second. Okay, 84% of you have said no, which is the correct answer. Excellent. Okay. Is this chart used correctly? Five seconds left. Okay, let's see. So the answer is not optimal because the chart fits its purpose in a sense of, okay, it's a bar chart. I can see the trend quite easily. Why it's not optimal is the usage of color and more precisely the usage of gradient, because I can't really know where the difference, where orange ends and blue begins and so on. So 50%. Is this chart used correctly? Okay, let's see. The correct answer is not optimal. Good job. So the reason here, I mean, it definitely makes sense for to use a bar chart for comparisons, but it's not optimal. Multiple issues here. The 42.8 is at the same length as 76.8. The usage of color doesn't make sense, and so on. Is this chart used correctly? Not optimal, 45%. That's good. So it's not optimal because, okay, it's a part of whole relationship, too many values, too many categories. And again, the legend here makes me go back and forth. It's not a good way of representing data. And is this chart used correctly? Let's see. 44% said no. Okay, let's see the overall percentage first. So it's 58% of you have answered correctly on average to all these questions. So we've went from 51.2 to 58% with the higher difficulty in questions. So great job, really. I'm really glad that you've learned something today in this session. And let's see who was the best at this. So Jack, okay, congratulations. Sorry, but this wasn't the contest. The contest is right now at the end. It has different questions. I won't be asking if the chart is used correctly or not. I'll make you think a little bit more. You'll have 45 seconds for each answer. And the winner will receive a Programmer's Week kit with a t-shirt, an agenda, a bag, a can, and so on. So I wish you good luck for this contest and try to do your best. Speed matters again, but don't try to rush into things, because if you give a wrong answer, you'll get 0 point. It doesn't matter, 0 points, no matter how fast you get it. And let's go. Okay. Time's up. So the correct answer was the bullet chart. It's the best because, again, I'm comparing actual to a target. We've went through this before. So unfortunately, none of you responded correctly to this one. Probably you haven't remembered the name of the bullet chart. So the leaderboard will be quite sad. Let's go to the next one. Okay, 95% of you have said add labels and reference. That's really great. Okay, next one. I'm disappointed a little bit by your answers here. It's a trend in time. I'm looking at the year from 2015 to 2018. I'm looking at two different categories. So a line chart would have worked best here. Let's skip the leaderboard to be a surprise at the end. This one is a little bit trickier. And it's about choosing the right metric. So think that you have these two cases. I have a case where I don't have a cart button, and the case where I do have a cart button, and I'm trying to see if I add a cart button on an app, if it helps me or not. How should that help me? What metric can I use to compare the results between control and tricking? Oh, okay. Nice. So there are two correct answers: percent of users which make a purchase and revenue per user. I can't use users who click on the cart button because I cannot have nothing to compare with, because initially I don't have a cart button. Arriving on the checkout page is not really my scope there, and neither is the number of items purchased per order. Which chart would you use for representing these results of an A/B test? So I have these results. I have just this table here, and I'm trying to represent it using a chart. I don't necessarily need to show all the data. I'm just looking at, okay, how can I represent it in order to gather the right conclusions after it? Let's see. So Bar chart and bullet chart are the correct answers. Box and whisker is not correct because I don't have all those values that I can compare. I don't have the information of what each user did. I just have this table. So I know it's 800,000 users, 600,000 users in control treatment and so on. So, okay. And let's see the winner. It's VP. Okay, what we'll do, VP, is for you to take a screenshot of your phone as well, because there's where you will be highlighted. You'll see you are highlighted on your phone, and send us an email to pw@softvision.com, including the above screenshot and your address, and we'll send you the this kit that you see on the right. One more thing that I'll kindly ask you is to provide some feedback after this presentation. You will be able to use your phone again. I'll leave it open even after this this session. You'll be able to complete the surveys. It has multiple. It's 4 questions if I remember right. So yeah, it shouldn't take more than 2 minutes to complete. I'm really interested in your feedback. So hopefully you'll get it to me. And thank you a lot. I'll quickly look into the Q&A section as well to see if there are some open questions, and I don't see any. There might be 2 reasons for that. Either I didn't trigger your interest very much, or we've went through some stuff in a good order and you understood everything. Anyways, if you still have questions or anything, you can even use the survey at the end, so the feedback form. You can use that. You can send me an email, if not, victor.lupaiescu@softvision.com if you have any other questions or you need guidance if you want to start a career in this area. So, thanks a lot for joining this. Hopefully it was a useful 90 minutes. I know it's longer than the usual tech talks that we had. And enjoy the rest of the week and the rest of the tech talks. I would definitely recommend you joining 3 more sessions about data. They're from colleagues from the big data and analytics community. 2 of them are tomorrow and 1 is on Friday. Those two from tomorrow are around how to use full text search on SQL Server. The other one is an introduction into data lake, and it's called Surfing the Data Lake. Then on Friday, you'll have another interesting session with how not to shoot yourself in the leg while working with SQL Server. And again, check the website for more tech talks. Have a great day, and thank you all for your participation.